The phone buzzed against my kitchen counter like an angry wasp. I knew that ringtone. I knew it meant trouble, tears, and another trip to the bank. My sister Magnolia's name glowed on the screen, and my stomach twisted into that familiar knot I'd carried for 15 years. "Clementine, thank God you picked up." Her voice cracked through the speaker, high and desperate. "It's Mom." She fell again. "The hospital bill. They want $12,000 up front for the surgery. Insurance won't cover it all, and you know I don't have that kind of money." I stared out my window at the modest garden I'd planted with the money I should have used for my own vacation last summer. The tomatoes were coming in nice. I'd grown them instead of seeing Paris. "Clementine? Are you there?" My mouth opened, and the word that came out surprised even me. It was quiet, calm, and absolutely final. "No." Silence stretched between us like a chasm. In that silence, I heard 15 years of emergency calls. Car accidents, divorce lawyers, wedding deposits, medical bills, house payments, business loans that never got paid back. Always urgent. Always desperate. Always my problem to solve. "What do you mean no?" Magnolia's voice turned sharp, cutting. "This is Mom we're talking about. Family doesn't say no to family." I set the phone on the counter and walked to my bedroom. In the bottom drawer, beneath winter sweaters, sat a manila envelope thick with receipts. 15 years of saying yes. 15 years of being everyone's personal bank. But what I found in that envelope would change everything I thought I knew about my family. Did Clementine just discover something that would shatter her world? What secrets has her family been hiding? Hit that like button if you're ready to find out what was in that envelope, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible story like this. My fingers trembled as I opened the envelope. Bank statements, canceled checks, loan documents, all organized by date like evidence in a courtroom. The smell of old paper and ink filled my nostrils, sharp and accusatory. There it was, in black and white. The pattern I'd been too generous to see. 15 years ago, Clementine, I need $5,000 for Jasper's college tuition. Just until the scholarship comes through. The scholarship that never existed. 12 years ago, emergency root canal, $3,000. You know I'm good for it. She wasn't. 8 years ago, the wedding venue wants a deposit. $15,000. I'll pay you back after the honeymoon. The honeymoon she took to Cabo while I ate ramen noodles for 6 months. Each receipt told the same story. Each promise was a lie wrapped in family obligation. I calculated the total and my heart stopped. $87,000. My entire inheritance from Grandma Opal gone. My savings evaporated. My dreams of traveling, opening a bookstore, buying a little house by the lake, all sacrificed on the altar of family loyalty. The worst part wasn't the money. It was the birthday card I found at the bottom of the stack. Last year's birthday. Magnolia's handwriting in purple ink. "Thank you for always being there for us, Clementine. You're the glue that holds this family together. We don't deserve you." She was right about one thing. They didn't deserve me. My phone buzzed again. A text from my nephew Jasper. "Aunt Clem, heard Mom called you about Grandma. Thanks for taking care of it like always." Like always. Those 2 words hit me like ice water. 15 years earlier. I was 30, fresh from my divorce, living in a tiny apartment that smelled like the previous tenant's cigarettes and broken dreams. That's when Magnolia first called, her voice honey-sweet and desperate. "Clementine, you know I wouldn't ask if I had any other choice." I'd been staring at the check in my hands, Grandma Opal's final gift to me. $50,000 and a note, "For my sweet Clementine. Use this to bloom where you're planted, not where others want to transplant you." Magnolia's crisis seemed so urgent then. Her husband had left, taking half their savings. Little Jasper needed stability, she said. A house, a fresh start. "I'll pay you back in 6 months, she promised. With interest. I remember walking to the bank, my hands shaking as I signed the wire transfer. The teller, a woman with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, looked at me carefully. "Honey, are you sure about this? It's a lot of money to send to family." "Sometimes." "She's my sister," I'd said, cutting her off. "Family takes care of family." The woman nodded, but her expression stayed troubled. She'd seen this before, I realize now. The enabler and the user, dancing their familiar dance. That night, I called Magnolia to confirm she'd received the money. She was at a restaurant. I could hear laughter and clinking glasses in the background. Oh, Clementine, you're an angel. A literal angel. I'm taking Jasper out to celebrate our new beginning. Our new beginning. Bought with my inheritance. 6 months came and went. Then a year. Then 2. Each time I brought up the money, there was a new emergency. A new reason she couldn't pay me back yet. But she could afford that restaurant. And the new car I saw in her driveway. And the vacation photos on Facebook. 3 days after I said no, my phone stayed blissfully quiet. No desperate calls, no guilt trips, no manufactured emergencies. The silence should have been peaceful, but it felt like the calm before a tornado. Then my neighbor Cordelia knocked on my door, her face flushed from her morning jog, silver hair pulled back in a ponytail that defied her 68 years. Clementine, honey, I hope you don't mind me asking, but is everything okay with your family? My stomach dropped. What do you mean? Well, I was having lunch with my book club yesterday, and Delia mentioned she saw your sister Magnolia at the country club. Apparently, she was telling everyone how you'd abandoned your poor mother in her time of need. The words hit me like physical blows. The country club? The one with the $500 monthly membership. Cordelia's weathered hands touched my arm gently. Honey, I've watched you for years. Driving that old Honda while everyone else gets new cars. Shopping at thrift stores while they post vacation pictures. I've been wondering when you'd finally wake up. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I drove to the country club. The parking lot was full of luxury cars that cost more than I made in 2 years. Inside, past the marble lobby that smelled of money and entitlement, I found Magnolia holding court at a table of perfectly coiffed women. Oh, my sister has always been so tight with money, she was saying, gesturing with a martini glass. Some people just don't understand family obligation. I stood there, invisible in my worn jeans and discount store blouse, watching my sister paint me as the villain in her perfectly crafted sob story. The woman who'd given her everything, reduced to a punchline over cocktails. That's when I saw him. My nephew Jasper, supposedly struggling in college, wearing a watch that cost more than my car. The pieces clicked into place with surgical precision. This wasn't desperation. This was calculation. I followed Jasper home from the country club, keeping my distance like a detective in a bad movie. My heart hammered against my ribs as I watched him pull into the driveway of a house I'd never seen before. Not just any house. A mansion with pillars that reached toward heaven and a 3-car garage that probably cost more than my entire home. The mailbox read, The Weatherbys. Jasper's last name was supposed to be Morrison, his father's name. But there he was, using keys to enter a house that belonged to people I'd never heard of. I sat in my Honda, engine ticking as it cooled, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Through the large windows, I could see movement. Jasper, yes, but also a man in an expensive suit. And then Magnolia appeared, laughing as she kissed the stranger on the cheek. My phone buzzed. A text from Magnolia, still hoping you'll reconsider about Mom's surgery. Family is all we have. I nearly laughed. Family. The word tasted bitter as medicine. I drove home and did what I should have done years ago. I hired a private investigator. Brennan Clay was a former police detective with tired eyes and gentle hands. His office smelled like coffee and honest work. He listened to my story without judgment, taking notes in a leather notebook that had seen better days. How long has this been going on? He asked. 15 years. He whistled low. Ma'am, in my experience, when someone's been playing a long con this successfully, there's usually more than one mark. What do you mean? I mean your sister might not be the only family member who's been taking advantage of your generosity. The truth arrived in a manila folder 3 weeks later. Bank records, property deeds, social media investigations. My family's real life, spread out like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle I'd been too blind to see. Magnolia wasn't struggling. She was married to Richmond Weatherby, heir to a pharmaceutical fortune. They lived in luxury while feeding me lies. But that wasn't the worst part. The photograph in Brennan's folder showed a group of people at what looked like a family reunion. There was Magnolia, laughing beside her secret husband. Jasper, healthy and happy, his arm around a girl I'd never met. My brother Caspian, who'd been too broke to visit in 5 years, standing beside a luxury RV. And in the center of it all, like a queen holding court, sat my mother. Not in a hospital bed. Not broken and frail, but radiant in a designer dress, surrounded by grandchildren I'd never been allowed to meet, holding a champagne glass like a scepter. The reunion had happened last month. The same week Magnolia called crying about Mom's emergency surgery. My hands shook as I read Brennan's report. The family had been gathering every year for the past decade. Everyone was invited. Everyone except me. They called it the annual gratitude gathering. They actually gave thanks for my stupidity. My willingness to fund their real lives while being shut out of them completely. The medical bills I'd paid? Fake. The emergencies? Fabricated. The gratitude? Performed for an audience of one sucker who believed family meant something. But the cruelest cut was in the final page of the report. A conversation Brennan had recorded between Magnolia and our mother. "Do you think Clementine suspects anything?" Mom's voice, clear and strong, not weak like she pretended on our rare phone calls. "Are you kidding? She's too pathetic to figure it out. Besides, where would we be without our little cash cow?" They both laughed. The sound of that laughter would haunt me forever, not because it was evil, but because it was so casual. So thoughtless. 15 years of my sacrifice reduced to a punchline between people who saw me as nothing more than a convenient wallet. That night, I sat in my empty house, the house I could have decorated beautifully with the money I'd given them, and made a decision. If they wanted to play games, I'd show them how the game really ends. The next morning, I woke up different. Not angry. Anger would have been too hot, too consuming. Instead, I felt like ice. Clear, cold, and sharp enough to cut through 15 years of lies. I made coffee in the silence of my modest kitchen, watching steam rise from the mug like prayers I'd stopped saying. The phone rang. Magnolia again. I let it go to voicemail. "Clementine, I don't understand why you're being so cruel. Mom is getting worse, and the doctors say..." I deleted it mid-sentence. The lies had become so automatic, she probably didn't even remember what the truth looked like anymore. But I remembered everything now. Every sacrifice I'd made while they lived in luxury. Every dream I deferred while funding theirs. Every birthday, holiday, and milestone I'd celebrated alone while they gathered without me. I opened my laptop and began typing. 3 letters, carefully crafted, each one surgical in its precision. The first went to Magnolia's Country Club. A formal complaint about membership fraud, complete with evidence that her financial information was falsified. She'd claimed poverty on her application to get reduced rates while living in a mansion. The second went to the IRS. Gift taxes on $87,000, unreported income, and some interesting questions about Richmond Weatherby's pharmaceutical company and their charitable foundation that seemed to benefit only the Weatherby family. The third was the most personal. A letter to the family's church, where Magnolia served on the board of trustees and regularly spoke about helping the less fortunate. I included photos from their secret reunions alongside copies of their desperate calls for my money. But these letters were just the beginning. The real reckoning would come when they realized what else I'd discovered. In all my years of financial detective work, I'd learned something they never expected. Every lie leaves a paper trail, and every secret has a price. I sealed the envelopes with the same steady hands that had signed so many checks for their fake emergencies. This time, though, I was investing in the truth. 2 weeks passed in beautiful silence. No phone calls begging for money. No manufactured crises. No guilt trips wrapped in family obligation. I spent those days like a woman recovering from a long illness, slowly remembering who I used to be. I bought fresh flowers for my kitchen table. I made reservations at the French restaurant I'd always wanted to try. I started planning the trip to Italy I'd dreamed about for 20 years. Then the calls started again. But this time, they weren't asking for money. "Clementine, what did you do?" Magnolia's voice was shrill, panicked. "The country club is investigating our membership. They're talking about fraud charges. I sipped my morning coffee, watching cardinals feed at the bird feeder I'd finally bought for myself. I have no idea what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. This has your fingerprints all over it. Like the fake medical bills? Or the phony emergencies? Or maybe like the family reunions I was never invited to. The silence stretched long enough for her to realize I knew everything. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Smaller. How long have you known? Long enough to understand that family doesn't just take care of family, Magnolia. Family includes family. The second call came from Jasper. Aunt Clementine, please, you have to help us. The IRS is asking questions about money we can't account for. Uncle Richmond's company is being audited. Mom is crying all the time. I'm sure she is. Crocodile tears are her specialty. This isn't a game anymore. You're right, I said, my voice steady as granite. It never was a game to me. The third call was the one I'd been waiting for. Mom's voice, not weak and frail like she'd pretended for years, but sharp and demanding. Clementine Rose Morrison, you fix this right now. You're tearing this family apart. No, Mom. I'm just stopping my part and keeping it together with my money while being shut out of my own family. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You all got comfortable using me as your personal ATM while laughing about it behind my back. But the Bank of Clementine is permanently closed. The beautiful thing about truth is that once it's released, it spreads like wildflowers. Or wildfire. 6 months later, I stood in the lobby of Sunnyside Manor, the most exclusive assisted living facility in the county. The marble floors gleamed like mirrors, reflecting back a woman I barely recognized. The old Clementine would have been nervous, apologetic, ready to fix whatever needed fixing. This Clementine wore confidence like armor. Mrs. Morrison? The administrator, a professional woman with kind eyes, approached with a folder. Your mother is in the rose garden. She's been asking for you. I found her there, sitting alone on a bench, looking smaller than I remembered. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by simple cotton dresses provided by the facility. The champagne glass had been replaced with a water bottle. Hello, Mom. She looked up, and for the first time in years, I saw something genuine in her eyes. Not manipulation or calculation, but actual remorse. Clementine. I wasn't sure you'd come. Neither was I. We sat in silence, watching staff members tend the roses with gentle precision. The flowers were beautiful here, well cared for, valued for what they were rather than what they could provide. The others told me what you did, she said finally. The investigations, the audit, the church board meeting. They told you I exposed their lies, you mean? She nodded slowly. Richmond's pharmaceutical company is under federal investigation now. The IRS found discrepancies going back a decade. Magnolia had to sell the house. And how do you feel about that? For a moment, I saw the mother I'd once loved, before money and manipulation poisoned our relationship. I feel like I raised a daughter who's stronger than I ever gave her credit for. You didn't raise me to be strong, Mom. Life did that. She reached for my hand, and I let her take it. Her fingers were thin now, fragile. Can you ever forgive us? I looked around the garden, at the roses blooming without asking permission, at the residents chatting on benches, at the staff who worked here because they chose to care for others, not because they had to. I already have, I said, and meant it. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back to the way things were. 5 years have passed since I said that single word that changed everything. No. I'm sitting in my bookstore now, Grandma Opal's garden, sipping tea that costs more than I used to allow myself to spend in a week. The afternoon sun streams through windows I painted sage green, warming shelves filled with stories that matter. The Italy trip was everything I'd dreamed. Rome, Florence, the Tuscan countryside where I learned to paint watercolors of olive groves. I came home with a new language on my tongue and possibilities blooming in my heart like the flowers I'd finally learned to tend. My family calls sometimes. Magnolia works at a department store now, Jasper finished community college on actual scholarships, and Mom seems content at Sunnyside Manor. Our conversations are brief but honest. The lies are gone, and what remains is fragile but real. But the most beautiful change is in my mirror. The woman looking back at me has gray threading through her dark hair and laugh lines earned by living for herself. She has opinions about wine and knows how to say no in 3 languages. She travels when she wants, eats what she craves, and loves without keeping score. The door chimes, and Cordelia enters with her book club, 5 silver-haired women who've become the family I chose instead of the one I was assigned. They're here for their weekly gathering, where we discuss novels and share stories that matter. "How was your writing class, Clementine?" asks Delia, settling into her favorite chair by the window. "Wonderful. I'm working on a memoir." "What's it about?" I smile, thinking of all the women who might read my story someday. Women who give until it hurts, who love until it breaks them, who think saying no makes them selfish instead of strong. It's about learning the difference between being generous and being used. About discovering that the most radical act of love is sometimes walking away. Through the window, I can see my garden thriving. Roses and tomatoes, herbs and wildflowers, all growing exactly where I planted them. No one asks them for emergency funding or guilt trips disguised as family obligation. They just bloom, beautiful and free, like I finally learned to do. The phone rings. I glance at it, see an unknown number, and let it go to voicemail. Whatever emergency someone thinks they're having can wait. I have a story to finish, a life to live, and flowers to tend. And for the first time in 43 years, my garden is growing exactly where I want it to bloom. Clementine's journey from doormat to empowered woman is complete, and her victory is the sweetest kind, the kind that comes from finally loving yourself enough to stop letting others take advantage of your love. If this story moved you, please like this video and subscribe for more powerful stories about finding strength in the most unexpected places. What would you have done in Clementine's situation? Let me know in the comments below.